Another long day delivering packages, and today is busier than ever. This UPS employee preferred not to give his name. As a so-called essential worker, he doesn't qualify for government support if he chooses to stay home.
I mean, like I said, I have a family, still gotta make money, you know.
And he is scared of the risks.
Well, yeah, I definitely am concerned about, bringing the virus back to my family, and I don't want that to happen.
While he's uneasy about going to work, millions of others wish they still had jobs to go to. Leave benefits are poorly regulated in the US, and many furloughed or newly unemployed workers are now relying on food donation centres like this one to survive.
I haven't been working for like a month already, and I have 4 kids, and it's kind of tough.
Across the country, lower income workers are having to face difficult decisions. Stay home, be safe and lose money, or keep earning and risk your health. One charity in Los Angeles wants to help. Project Angel Food provides meals to the vulnerable and is now swapping volunteers for paid employees. Rebecca Nuren was working as a chef but lost her job. She's gladly accepted a new role preparing meals.
I got laid off from my job, so I'm super happy to be here. I get to stay employed, plus I'm getting to do something that I kind of feel like is helping out.
There are health risks, but the charity says it's doing everything it can to provide a safe workspace.
We're paying people overtime. We're using sanitation crews more than we ever have to clean and do deep cleanings in the kitchen. And we're just spending more money knowing that the community will come through for us.
While the world is on lockdown, it's the essential services that are barely keeping the economy going, but in doing so, many workers must choose between financial and physical health. Duncan McKenzie McHarg, TRT World, Los Angeles.
Well, for more, let's go to Christian Lawrence, who joins us now from New York. He's a senior market strategist at Rabobank. Welcome to Money Talks, Christian. Now, millions more people applied for unemployment benefits last week, 6.6 million, in fact, bringing the total to around 17 million since the outbreak began. Just how much longer do you expect to see these numbers rise in such magnitude?
Well, thank you for having me. And of course, these numbers really are heartbreaking. As the video you just played showed, these numbers reflect real people with real families. And that's nearly 10% of the workforce that has now fallen unemployed over the last 3 weeks. Unfortunately, that's unlikely to be the end of it. We are going to continue to see unemployment rise over the next couple of months. And it's likely that in the second quarter, we'll probably see unemployment at as high as 25% in the US. So very, very upsetting data. And of course, this really shows how deep the recession the US is going to fall into is becoming.
Yeah, so 25% unemployment, it's really unimaginable, isn't it? But just before the numbers were released, the US Federal Reserve announced quite a significant package of its own, $2.3 trillion to bolster local governments and small and medium-sized businesses. And that, I guess, will hopefully stem some of those job losses. But just how effective will a package like that be?
Well, of course, we've seen so much in the way of new packages from the Federal Reserve and also from the government itself, so both fiscal and monetary stimulus. And as we can see with the way the markets are trading this morning, they have certainly welcomed that extra stimulus from the Federal Reserve. And we can't understate just how much the Fed has done over the last few months. We now have open-ended and unlimited government bond purchases. We have seen more in the last month than we saw in the prior 10 years. But unfortunately, we're facing a demand and a supply shock. So really, these measures will help soften the fall. But the bottom line is, while the economy is still in lockdown, people won't be going out and spending. So it's really about trying to soften that downturn and provide a strong boost when the worst of the virus is past us, so that we can see a much stronger and prolonged recovery. But unfortunately, none of this solves the underlying issue, which of course is a virus that we desperately need a vaccine for.
That's right. Now, together with the government's stimulus packages, do you believe that both the US government and the US Fed are doing enough in order to cushion the economic impact from this outbreak?
Well, they've certainly done a lot. We've seen the Fed move into purchasing corporate bonds for the first time, and today they announced that they would potentially buy some junk-rated corporate bonds. They've done pretty much everything they can without going into buying equities. And the fact that today's facilities are really aimed at the real economy, I certainly think is a positive. But of course, this isn't without side effects. We're going to see the US's debt absolutely balloon. The deficit is likely to increase substantially. And that's not without its risks further down the line. But of course, at the moment, what we're trying to do is trying to prevent households and businesses from really suffering and going into bankruptcy in the short term. So long-term problems, but short-term, this is completely necessary.
If we can take a look at the global economy now, economists at JP Chase have put the lost output from this pandemic at around $5.5 trillion, or almost 8% of the GDP. Through the end of next year. Other Wall Street banks have made similar warnings. Does this just underscore the need for other governments to act with a sense of urgency as well in terms of stimulus and liquidity?
Well, we have seen a lot of action from other governments as well. We've seen some central banks move into areas they've never moved into before, like asset purchases. Australia and New Zealand are a standout there. As your video mentioned earlier, we're seeing significant stimulus in the UK as well. Even Germany, which is usually very fiscally prudent, has loosened its belt and is trying to provide some stimulus. So we are seeing that globally. But the US is in a very privileged position in that it can see government debt increase without it being quite so much as a concern as it would be for other countries. And that's really because the US dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. It is still what the financial system runs on. So the US is in a very privileged position in that it does have a bit more room than most.
Okay, Christian Lawrence, Senior Market Strategist at Rabobank. Thank you so much for your analysis.